Okay, so today we're going to go over copyright guidelines. So before I go over the guidelines, let's discuss what is copyright. So copyright is just like the word sounds. It's the legal rights to copy or use an original work. But did you know in the US, you don't have to register your work? But people often will just for that extra protection. Copyright protects all tangible works, both published and non-published. And what I mean by tangible is that it's these things that you can see or touch, versus untangible is something you can't see or touch. So, for example, an idea. So you can't copyright an idea until you've turned it into something tangible. So some examples of tangible works, both published and non-published, are things like social media posts, blog posts, music, artwork, photos, plays, poems, novels, dances and choreography, movies, software, architecture, and the list goes on and on. So just because you find something on the internet, that does not mean you can use it. So as you're having to find images or videos or even information for other classes, you need to stop and ask yourself before you use it, do you have the right to copy this person's work? So we'll go over ways that you can answer that question. But first, before we dive into these guidelines, let's review the possible consequences. So I know you all want to know, well, what if I do copyright someone else? What are some things that can happen? Well, for our school, we have our code of conduct. And under that, the teacher can give you a 0. You can fail the assignment. There can be a parent conference, or there will be a parent or guardian conference, and that is possible in extreme cases for you to face expulsion. In the real world, and which you are in now, so this applies to you still, you can also face hefty fines. It can be pretty high fines, and in extreme cases, you can face time in prison. So, fair use. So fair use is the copyright exception that's used for educational means. So things used by teachers or students. So when we're talking about fair use, things under fair use, you can ask yourself these questions. First off, why? Why is this material being used? Is it for educational purposes or commercial purposes? Will you profit from it? Ask yourself what? What exactly are you trying to use? Is this product made for educational purposes, but you could impact sales? So maybe it's something someone has created and requires money for use, and you use it without permission, then that is impacting their sales. And then how much? So how much of their content are you using? Is it sometimes when it's just a very small amount of something, it could be considered fair use, versus if you use an entire work, then no. So for example, music, and we'll talk about that in more detail later. And then finally, another how does it affect the creator? So think about the person that originally created this. How will it affect them if you use their material? So does the use of their material, will it negatively affect their sales of the original work? Okay, so that would mean no, you can't use it. So fair use is kind of hard to determine. There's a lot of gray area in determining fair use. So sometimes it can be difficult to decide if it's something that is okay to use or not. So when in doubt, use work that's on the public domain. So the public domain is where the work is owned by the public, and you don't necessarily have to get permission to use it. So this includes things like expired work, published work that's published before a certain date, or in some cases, the creator has placed the work in the public domain for people to use. So here are 4 examples. There's many more, and they are all listed on the library website, but just for this presentation, I'm going to quickly go over 4 possible public domain resources you could use. So the first one is Project Gutenberg. All right, so Project Gutenberg is a library, as you can see, of over 70,000 free ebooks. So these are books that are no longer protected under copyright. So these are books that you can start reading now. Usually it's more classic literature, but you can look through and find anything that looks interesting. Okay? Another awesome public domain resource is the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Okay, so here you can search through and find pictures that you can use as long as you properly attribute it, but you can use for various projects. So you can just scroll down, use the search to find what you need. Another free domain resource is LibriVox. Okay, so this one has the free public domain of audiobooks. So these are read by people throughout the world. Okay, so if you are one that likes to listen to your books, then here is a great resource for you. And then these archives, Prelinger Archives, is our final resource to go over. So these are films, all kinds of films that are in the public domain that you can use. Okay, so those are 4 examples of public domain resources. Another great resource you can use is Creative Commons. So Creative Commons is an international organization that makes it possible for creators to put their Creative Commons license on their work, and that determines the terms of using the original content. But you don't have to pay to use it. So if you go to Creative Commons, go to Use and Remix. Okay, there are a lot of works that you can use as long as you attribute it correctly. Okay, so right here, this goes through what you would need to include for that. All right. So don't forget about Creative Commons, and that is also listed on the website. And this presentation will also be available on the library website. All right, so, So now I'm going to briefly go over some guidelines on using visuals, music, videos, and text. The focus is primarily on those sources found online, but I'll touch a little bit on those found in books and articles as well. So let's talk about visuals, images. Okay, so copyright for visuals. As far as physical copyright, you can use 1 illustration per book, periodical, or newspaper, and that is under the free use. You can use 1 diagram, chart, or picture from a single source, or 1 visual per source for presentation visuals. You cannot use copyrighted cartoon characters, and you cannot just copy images off of Google or other search engines. You need to go to the original source so you can cite it properly. And like I already showed you Creative Commons, if you need to use some images for something, for a project, then you need to you could make good use of Creative Commons. All right, so now music. So music. Let's go over copyright guidelines for music. So under the fair use, you can copy up to 10% of a song. As you know, some of you will perform a piece, maybe. You can copy music from a recording that's owned by the school or your teacher. And you can use in a video for educational or personal use. So maybe you got to make a video for someone's class. You can use it for that. You cannot copy music from a website. You cannot just copy printed music. You cannot use music in a video that's made shareable by the public without proper citation and following the proper copyright laws. You cannot perform someone else's music publicly, and you cannot make an arrangement without permission of someone else's work. All right, so now videos. Copyright guidelines for videos. So you can use videos for educational personal purposes. So if you were giving a presentation for a class and you wanted to bring in a video that shared something that you thought was enlightening, then you can use that. And you can use videos as long as you don't share them publicly. So you cannot record a movie or TV show without permission. You cannot alter the content. And you cannot share it publicly online or in real life. So text. Now we've already had a presentation over plagiarism, specifically talking about writing your papers and your research. So I want to go further and talk about using someone's written words from online, from the internet. Okay, so what you need to do for copyright guidelines for online text, you need to follow the plagiarism guidelines we've already gone over, and that is also available on the library website. And you need to make sure you use appropriate citations when using someone's ideas or words. Okay, you cannot copy someone else's blog or post. I know a lot of people that might be tempting to just copy someone else's work and use it as your own. But once again, like we've already said, just because it's on the internet doesn't mean you can just use it without permission. And you cannot quote someone else without giving them the proper attribution. So I want to leave with you 5 copyright rules to remember. So I found these from, it was a infographic from EduBlogs, and I thought it was really good, and I condensed it a little bit to share with you. So 5 things to remember. Just because you found it online, that doesn't mean it's free to use. Alternatively, though, number 2, there are a lot of resources you can use freely online, and we went over those today. Number 3, you have a right as a creator to have your work protected from copying. Number 4, if in doubt about using content, ask the creator for permission. Find a free alternative, purchase an alternative, or make your own material. And number 5, instead of looking for loopholes, consider whether you're being the most responsible and ethical digital citizen you can be. All right, so that is the end. These are my works cited. And if you have further questions,